In the autumn of 1347, 12 ships docked at the Sicilian port of Messina, their sails slack and ragged, their crews strangely silent. Merchants, dockworkers, and curious townsfolk gathered, unease whispering through the crowd as they saw the condition of these vessels. As dockhands stepped aboard, what they witnessed made their blood run cold. Bodies sprawled on deck, sailors dying in agony, their skin blackened and swollen with terrifying dark boils, oozing blood and pus. Within days, panic swept through Messina. An unstoppable force had arrived, one that would forever alter the course of human history. The Black Death had begun. Carried along trade routes, riding silently in fleas hidden on the fur of rats, the bubonic plague tore mercilessly through Europe, Asia, and parts of North Africa. Nobody was safe from its grip. Neither rich nor poor, priest nor pauper could escape its devastating wrath. Entire families were wiped out within a week. Whole villages turned into ghost towns. Eyewitnesses spoke of carts piled high with corpses, mass graves dug hurriedly by desperate, exhausted survivors. The living fled from the dying in terror, abandoning their loved ones, their homes, even their humanity, in frantic efforts to escape this invisible enemy. The sheer speed of the contagion was horrifying. By 1348, within a single year of its arrival in Sicily, the plague engulfed Italy, France, England, Germany, and Spain. It ravaged great cities like Paris, Rome, Florence, and London, claiming victims by the thousands daily. Doctors, helpless against a disease they couldn't understand, resorted to desperate measures, bleeding patients dry, burning aromatic herbs to ward off the miasma, or isolating entire communities. But their efforts were futile. Within 5 years, between 1/3 and 1/2 of Europe's population, approximately 25 million people, had perished. The plague didn't discriminate. Peasants and princes alike succumbed. In Avignon, Pope Clement X sat trapped inside his palace, ringed by fires and aromatic spices in a desperate attempt to avoid contamination. He survived, but over half of the clergy serving him were not so lucky. Kings and queens fled their palaces, hiding in remote castles and countryside manors, praying the plague wouldn't find them. It always did. Society itself trembled on the brink of collapse. Fields went untended, harvests rotted in the soil, livestock wandered abandoned, trade halted. The world seemed to stand still, breathlessly awaiting the next wave of tragedy. As death stalked the land, panic bred paranoia. Frightened and desperate, Europeans sought scapegoats. Jews, accused of poisoning wells, became targets of horrifying persecution. Entire Jewish communities were slaughtered or expelled in horrific pogroms driven by terror and ignorance. Religious fervor spiraled into extremes. Flagellants marched from town to town, whipping themselves bloody in public penance, convinced God's wrath brought the plague as punishment for humanity's sins. This era of darkness and hysteria marked a terrible new chapter in human cruelty and superstition, born from fear and despair. Yet, even amidst tragedy, humanity adapted. Survivors discovered isolation could sometimes halt the disease's spread. In Milan, city leaders boarded up infected homes with their residents still inside. Cruel measures, but effective. Venice pioneered quarantine, isolating incoming ships for 40 days. 40 giorni, the root of our modern term, quarantine. Slowly, the rate of infection began to decrease, offering faint glimmers of hope amidst unending tragedy. By 1353, the worst wave had subsided. Europe lay shattered, changed beyond recognition. Entire towns vanished from maps, left abandoned and forgotten. Farms and estates, suddenly without laborers, became wastelands. The economy teetered near total collapse. Yet, ironically, this devastation planted seeds of profound transformation. With fewer workers left alive, peasants gained leverage they'd never dreamed possible, demanding higher wages, better working conditions, and greater freedoms. The rigid, centuries-old feudal system began to crumble. Lords, desperate for labor, were forced to grant concessions previously unimaginable, setting the stage for an economic and social revolution that would forever alter Europe's societal fabric. This shift empowered ordinary people like never before. Serfs became tenants, some even landowners, climbing upward through social strata previously impenetrable. Freed from absolute dependence on aristocratic landlords, common people began to enjoy previously unknown freedoms. Over time, this redistribution of wealth and opportunity sparked what would later evolve into the middle class, a fundamental pillar in modern societies. The plague's devastation wasn't limited to economics. It reshaped people's beliefs, ideas, and worldviews. Religious authority had suffered immensely. Priests had died in droves, many abandoning their duties in panic, their authority undermined by their inability to protect themselves or their congregations. Disillusioned survivors began questioning the absolute power and wisdom of the Church, planting early seeds of the Reformation. Skepticism blossomed, and Europe's intellectual landscape underwent profound transformation. The Renaissance, emerging just decades later, owed much to the Black Death's reshaping of the human mind. Moreover, the plague altered humanity's relationship with life and death. Surrounded daily by mortality, survivors developed new attitudes. Artistic and literary expressions of the era turned somber, preoccupied with death and the afterlife. Danse macabre, the dance of death, became a prevailing motif in paintings, plays, and poetry, a stark reminder that death spares nobody, rich or poor. This cultural fixation reflected a deeper psychological shift. Life, suddenly fragile and fleeting, became something precious, worth living fully and boldly. Thus emerged, paradoxically, an extraordinary cultural flowering born directly from unimaginable tragedy. Medical practices and sciences underwent revolutionary shifts as well. Before the plague, medicine was shackled by tradition and superstition. Afterwards, desperate to understand and prevent further calamities, scholars sought answers in empirical observation rather than doctrine. Anatomy, biology, and the first stirrings of modern epidemiology emerged as new fields of research. Physicians learned to trust observation and evidence, laying foundations for modern medical science. Beyond Europe, the plague's effects rippled globally. In Asia, especially in China and the Middle East, populations also plummeted, altering political balances. In the Middle East, the mighty Mongol Empire weakened dramatically, their grip loosened by demographic catastrophe. In China, the Yuan dynasty staggered under plague's blows, eventually falling to the Ming dynasty's rise. A seismic shift in Asian politics reshaped by disease. Even geographically, the plague left its mark. Vast stretches of farmland across Europe reverted to wilderness, forests reclaiming abandoned fields and villages. Wildlife populations surged back into territories long dominated by humans. It would take generations for Europe's population to recover, reshaping landscapes into unfamiliar wildernesses where human presence had once been dominant. Perhaps most profoundly, the Black Death altered humanity's collective psyche forever. It shattered assumptions of invulnerability, questioned established institutions, and demonstrated humanity's fragility. No longer could humans believe themselves masters of the natural world. Nature had asserted itself violently, brutally demonstrating humanity's limitations. The psychological scars of such collective trauma left Europe cautious, introspective, but ultimately resilient. This resilience, born of profound tragedy, reshaped civilization. Humanity emerged from this dark chapter more innovative, skeptical, and adaptive. Europe evolved politically, economically, culturally, scientifically, and spiritually in ways previously unimaginable. The Renaissance, the Enlightenment, modern science, medicine, even democracy, all trace roots back to the dramatic shifts initiated by this plague's aftermath. Such transformation came at an unimaginable cost, a cost measured not only in lost lives, but in suffering, fear, and despair. Yet this devastating pandemic ultimately pushed civilization forward in surprising, profound ways. Today, when pandemics arise, we recall the harsh lessons of the Black Death. Lessons in humility, preparedness, science, and compassion. Humanity continues to live in the long shadow cast by this medieval horror, reminding us eternally of our fragility and resilience alike. Nearly 7 centuries later, the Black Death still haunts us, a stark reminder of what humans endured and overcame. History's darkest moments often teach the most profound lessons, changing the trajectory of civilization forever. The Black Death's unimaginable devastation set the stage for modernity itself, influencing society, culture, politics, economics, and medicine in ways felt even today. Its legacy stands as a testament to humanity's ability to endure, adapt, and ultimately transform tragedy into triumph. From those first 12 ships in Sicily to the sprawling interconnected globe of today, the shadow cast by the Black Death has shaped our world in ways we can barely fathom. It was not merely a disease. It was a force of nature powerful enough to reshape human civilization itself, echoing through centuries, its lessons forever carved into history.